Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. So today's presentation is Advances in Orthotic Management to facilitate better standing balance and walking fluency for the CMT client. Just a little bit of background of myself. It's in the paperwork that's given. Now at Neuromuscular Orthotics in Melbourne, and my partner Paul Sprague with me. So I'm the principal orthotist of adults and Paul's the principal orthotist of kids. We're based in Melbourne. We look after about 1,000 neurology clients. We only manage neurology, nothing else. So we manage about 950 adults, 50 kids at our Melbourne practice. And then we also have a Perth practice, which is based in West Leederville. And they're a little bit different. They're a predominantly kids practice that manages 1,000 kids, 500 adults. My partner, I'll show you a video right at the end of some of the work we've been doing with some of the CMT children. And that work that we did with the children led Cerebral Palsy Alliance in New South Wales to ask us to participate in a study with them looking at how the new technology can be used for cerebral palsy kids. So my colleague Paul visits RIDE New South Wales twice a month where he consults with the cerebral palsy kids, but Cerebral Palsy Alliance allows him to see other neurology in that practice as well. For appropriate governance, we're a clinical practice predominantly, but we're also a distribution company in Australia for prosthetics and orthotics. We import and distribute 5 lower limb orthotic components that we use in our practice, and they're only available for sale to certified prosthetists or orthotists for inclusion in the manufacturing orthoses. Why it's important is one of the components that we bring out, PDE from Fabtech Systems in Seattle, is used extensively now in the CMT client. So I wanted to just be upfront with that. So today I'm going to cover where has the orthotic developments come from over the last 3 years. Going to cover a little bit on the biomechanics of walking and what happens in walking for the CMT client. Going to look at standing balance. Going to introduce you to the new dynamic GRAFO family, and then I'm going to show you 6 CMT clients walking in this new family of orthoses. Okay, the 6 clients range from 8 years of age to 80 years of age. Okay, so you'll see diversity across the group. So where did this development come from? The field of prosthetics has been very advanced for the last 30 years. So I'm going to show you a picture from Rio. I want you to watch in lane 6, we have Richard Whitehead running in the 200-metre sprint. Richard Whitehead is a bilateral transfemoral amputee who's lost both of his legs above the knees. And he's running against athletes that have only lost one leg. Okay, so Richard in lane 6, phenomenal athlete. And then you'll see the Nigerian boy in lane 4 running. So how does someone who has lost both legs at thigh level run quicker than someone who's lost one leg only? Okay, and Richard is a phenomenal athlete, but the reason why he runs so fast is because of science, orthotic science and orthotic development of carbon fiber blades. Okay, so now I'm going to show you, so Richard doesn't have a knee joint, but he runs faster. The carbon fiber stores energy and releases energy. When the carbon fiber deforms, it has increasing resistance. When thermoplastic or plastics deform, it has decreasing resistance. So orthotics has progressed very quickly over the last 3 years because we want to give our neurology clients more propulsion in walking and to mimic normal human motion. Now we're going to watch Richard in lane, I think he's in lane 5, and we've got Scotty Reardon, the Australian, in lane 3. Okay, so at about the 50-metre mark, Scotty Reardon's probably 10 to 15 metres in front of him. And I want you to watch Richard Whitehead at the end come through. Okay, so Scotty Reardon won gold in Rio, but another 5 metres he would have lost. And Scotty Reardon has only 1 transfemoral amputation. Richard Whitehead has 2 transfemoral amputations. So prosthetic science is driving his ability to function and walk. So what happened was, actually I'll just come back to that. Before I go into orthotic development, I just want to cover a little bit on what walking is. So with walking, it's called a gait cycle. So when you land on your heel of the right foot, the moment you land on the heel of the right foot again, it's called one gait cycle. Stance phase is the period where that foot is on the ground, and it occupies about 60% of the gait cycle. Swing is when your foot is in the air. It's about 40% of the gait cycle. And the average human walking speed is about 1.4 metres per second. Okay. So what happens in walking? Sorry about that. Let me go back. Okay, so what happens at a biomechanics level is when we walk as humans, we exert forces into the ground, and the ground exerts forces back through our body. Okay, that force from the ground is called, we'll just call it the ground reaction force. And what happens in walking is when we land on our heel, our foot goes downwards, and that's called plantar flexion. When the foot comes upwards, it's called dorsiflexion. Okay, so what happens is the ground exerts forces on our ankle joint, our knee joint, and our hip joint. And in walking, we need muscles to counteract that external moment of force that's caused by the ground. So when we land on our heel, the ground's force passes behind the ankle, and the ground's force is trying to make the foot go downwards and foot slap. For any of the CMT clients that have dorsiflexion weakness and you hear your foot slap when you walk, it's because those dorsiflexors aren't working. The ground's force is still passing behind the ankle at the moment you land on your heel, and we have no power to resist that. So you slap, okay? And so what happens is during walking, muscles come in and out during the gait cycle. Those muscles, when they come in and out through the gait cycle, this is courtesy of a YouTube video from the team at the Learning Portal, muscles will come in and out in the gait cycle. So I want you to consider, if you've been affected by CMT, what muscles are affected in your lower limbs. Do you have muscle weakness in the thigh, hips, and bum as well? You know what I mean? But for predominantly the larger number of the CMT clients that we manage, and we manage hundreds at our practice in Melbourne, they predominantly have weakness in the drop foot muscles, the ankle dorsiflexors, but more importantly, they have a weakness in their calf muscles. And so what happens, there's a period in walking where other than your calf muscle group, every other muscle other than our hip on the side has actually switched off. Okay? So when I go to that particular graph, so actually I'll come back to that one. Let me come back. Okay, so what happens in walking is we have muscles that come in and out, and this is courtesy of Deckers and Beckers from 1996. So we have the red circles that I've highlighted is we have a muscle group called tibialis anterior. So that's supposed to fire when we land on our heel so that we don't get foot slap. And then that muscle switches off until about 50-60% in the gait cycle, where it has to switch on again so that we don't have drop foot and we don't catch our toes in swing. Okay? So how does some of our CMTers walk when they have drop foot? Pretty common. What you'd see, a lot of clients look at this and go, that's me. That's how I walk. So if you want to correct drop foot and you Google foot drop orthoses, there's 100+ orthoses on Google that says all of these control drop foot. The main reason is to control drop foot in swing, you need 1 to 2 Newton meters of force. The orthosis needs very little force to control drop foot because it's non-weight bearing at that time. In that period in early stance when it's trying to stop foot slap, the orthosis needs 10 to 15 Newton meters of force on average to control foot slap. But what happens if you have calf weakness? So I said that those I've highlighted, if you look at the bottom 3, gastrocnemius, soleus, and tib post, there's a period in walking from around that 30% to 50% where we have this muscle up the top, gluteus medius, right? So that's responsible for keeping our pelvis level when our good leg is swinging. So in this middle period of walking, let's say if your right leg's affected, it's when your left leg is swinging in the air, okay? So in this period of walking, these 3 muscles are solely responsible for slowing the rate of that tip, the bones in the leg, and keeping you upright and stable, okay? So if you as a CMT client has weakness in those 3 muscle groups, it's very hard to stay stable during that mid-stance period. So I'm going to show you one of our CMTers who has calf weakness. David is 35 years old. He's a teacher in Wangaratta. So when David walks, so he has lost every single muscle group below knee level. So when he walks, his legs come forward, the knees come forward, and there's no control for that rate of movement. So what happens with David? He gets fatigued very fast. His quadriceps, which aren't supposed to be working during that period, now have to switch on to keep the knee stable. And a lot of our clients that we see, they have like cyclist-sized thighs. And their quadriceps are that hypertrophied because they're having to work for a lot longer because those calf muscles aren't working or not working optimally during that period of walking. So the human body is has phenomenal compensatory abilities. If we play David again one more time. David has zero power in every single muscle below the knee, but he can walk without orthoses. How is that quality of walking and how long can he walk for is determined by how those thigh, hip and bum muscles can work during that period to keep him upright and stable. Okay, so what generally happens, so I've just highlighted in green, when those two muscle groups, if you have those bottom three that are affected, those two green muscle groups have to work for a longer period. And quadriceps and glutes need to fire for longer to offset that grounds force. So I showed you the picture of the 100 plus orthoses that can manage drop foot. But prior to 3 years ago, we really had only a family of 4 braces that could control calf weakness during stance phase. And they were all braces that blocked ankle motion. So to give that client stability during mid-stance, you had to stop the ankle from dorsiflexing, which meant that you had a rigid structure at all times. How that had a detrimental influence, if you wore a structure like this and you landed on your heel, if you had any quadricep weakness, this brace causes your knee to bend when you first land on your heel. So if you had quadricep weakness, then you were potentially at risk of your knee collapsing and you falling over. So what a lot of our CMT clients do is, if they have quadricep weakness and they're wearing this type of brace, they never want to let the knee go forward, so they just stay and land on the heel the whole time. They just weight bear on the heel, never let the knee bend. So the other detrimental factor about this bracing style, this is an ankle graph, right? This shows how the ankle moves roughly during gait cycle. Okay, so when we land on our heel, our ankle's roughly going downwards by about 5 to 10 degrees. And from that position through to mid-stance, it's now going upwards and the leg's coming forward to about 15 to 20 degrees, okay? Then right at the end of that period when we're just about to swing the leg, the ankle goes through a massive range. So it goes from 15 to 20 in the opposite direction. And that's where we get our propulsion and drive during that period. So these braces that blocked ankle motion, in this period of gait, they don't give you any propulsion back, okay? So where did orthotic development come from? The two pioneers of this technology that you're going to see are 2 orthotists out of the US. We have a young lady with CMT here, and their first generation of their development of like the amputee running blades was Helios. So you have Mitchell Warner out of Las Vegas and Marmaduke Loke out of San Diego. So what they decided, they looked at how the amputee running blades were designed and they said, okay, we're going to build a below knee brace for a CMT young lady, and instead of designing struts along the back, from the sides of her ankle, we're going to build 2 struts that cross over like a helix, and they called it Helios. Those 2 struts weren't connected. They were separate from each other. So you're going to see her walk in their first generation of Helios. These Helios orthoses and all of this family of orthoses must have a front section that sits underneath your kneecap for optimal function. So she's in a Helios. If she was wearing pants or long trousers, you would not know that she was wearing orthoses at all. She's got very good thigh, hip and bum strength, so she can run. If any, like we manage hundreds of polio clients, they're affected in their thigh, hips and bums, they will never run because they don't have that power. So she's got that capability, but their first generation was very much based around their skill sets in how they made and manufactured it. Also, what happened was when you landed on your heel, these braces didn't actually allow that much plantar flexion, the ankle going downwards during that period. So if you had weak quadriceps, you were then a little bit susceptible to that knee collapse. So what happened was they looked at how amputee running blades were designed, and 7 companies around the world have now built their own running blade for orthotics. Okay, so we have 3 years later after these guys first developed, 7 companies came back and said, you're hand making all of this, how about we make this more reproducible for our clients and more reproducible for our clinicians? So that if you made a brace on year 1 and you were remaking that brace on year 4, you could put the same strut in and give the client a similar function to what they had. When we got back from America in 2010, we tried to make hundreds of these Helioses that they were making because they won't teach it. And we made braces for our CMT clients. We made a Helios on year 1, then we made the Helios on year 4, and on year 4, our CMT client would say, it doesn't feel the same, it's stiff. And it was because we were hand making that in year one. Often clients were atrophying and getting a little bit more thinner and shrinking. So carbon fibre is reflective of geometry as well in those designs. So then what happened was the company started to develop, actually Garth, could I just have that strut? Thanks, mate. So 7 companies started to work on designs that had removable struts. So I've just connected this to a pole, you can test it. This particular strut comes in 3 different lengths and it's connected by 4 screws, and it has 7 different stiffnesses that you as the client can pick and choose which one you want to use. So when you land on your heel now, so this is a category 1 strut, which is a very low stiffness strut. So when you land on your heel, instead of the brace giving you a push forward like that, now you can actually get the foot down. The strut bends and deflects. Okay, so your clinicians can now fine tune, and yourself, you can choose how much plantar flexion do you want during that period of gait. Okay. Generally what I'm finding with the CMT clients, a lot of CMT clients will go, I want it to be more flexible. I want my foot to get down on the ground quicker, and I want to go up and down slopes. I want to go up and down ramps. Okay, but that's got to be tailored conversely with how much calf weakness you have. So what happens is the foot comes down, carbon fibre has increasing resistance with tension. So what happens if I let this go, this will come and fling forward. The carbon fibre always wants to come back to its original shape where it started. Okay? So it gets the limb moving forward after that period, and then through that mid-stance period where your calf is, if you've got calf weakness, these struts are now deflecting forward. And I'm 90 kilos of body weight. I'm 90 kilos of body weight coming over a strut that's bending and deflecting. And I showed you that graph of that ankle where all the old braces never allowed the ankle to go through that range to give us propulsion. So their designs have been working on trying to get it to come forward like that, and then to give you push off and propulsion, getting the carbon to work through range. So now your orthotists have 7 different families of struts that they can use in their orthotic designs. Okay, just some variants of how they're designed and based. So let's have a look at the 6 CMT clients. How am I doing for time? Okay. How much have we got? 15? Okay. So let's have a look at one of Garth's clients, a young 20-year-old from the ACT. So all of the footage the CMT clients have given us permission to share. So I've said to Nathan, I just want you to stand for 30 seconds. What happens in standing is, we use our anti-gravity muscles, and we predominantly use our calf muscle to make micro changes and fire to keep us stable. The moment Nathan stands, so he's got no muscle power below knee level at all. Okay, Nathan's in a pair of strut design orthoses. I said, Nathan, stand for 30 seconds. So what happens is, so when you're standing, as long as you've got that front tibial wall that sits underneath your kneecap, you can lean into it. It holds you, wants to keep bringing you back up, keeps holding you. If you lean backwards, it wants to hold you, keep wanting to bring you forward. So these struts allow far better standing, and this applies to not only CMT clients, you'll see Nathan, 20-year-old, I'm going to show you 75-year-old in a second who stand and function similarly. It's about supplementing muscle power and letting the ankle work through some range rather than blocking motion. Thanks, mate. Okay, so let's have a look at Nathan walk. Okay, so Nathan, 0 power below the knees. Again, body's phenomenal at being able to function still. You can see Nathan's got a very significant weakness in his upper limbs as well. So because of Nathan has significant thigh, hip and bum involvement as well. Okay. In our practices, we're very conservative in our practices. We try and only manage with the minimal amount, and let's see if we stabilise clients below the knee, do they have the ability for those thigh, hips and bums muscles to work in the timing and amount of magnitude of power that they need to be able to function. So you have Nathan walks well. You'll see a couple of the others come up. He never walks as well as some of our 75-year-olds, but it's because of the level of thigh, hip and bum involvement. So let's have a look at David now. Again, David, I've just said, David, I want you to stand for 30 seconds, mate. So so we're just increasing in age brackets at the moment. So David's 35 plus. So I've said, David, stand for 30 seconds, mate. So stand in your position. So for David's standing position, he has to flex his knees a lot more. I asked him straighten your knees, and then his centre of mass fell backward behind his body, and he didn't have the calf power to resist that, so he had to readjust. So I'm sure it's very similar to what a lot of you guys experience in standing. So again, you can see very high. So when you see them wearing their orthoses, they're wearing knee-high socks that come up above the level of the kneecaps. Because these structures are based on having a front wall, in a lot of the CMT clients, the muscles are very atrophied around that front wall, and we have a very strong tibia bone that is very prominent in a lot of these clients. So they'll wear a knee-high sock, fully padded front, and then they'll roll the sock over the top. Let's have a look at David walking. So you'll see this video shows David walking barefoot again, and you'll see him walk with his braces on, and you'll see him walk barefoot again. So when I look at the mechanics of David's walking, so David has that foot slap that I was telling you about. So when he lands on his heel, the foot slaps down because the front muscles in the front of the knee aren't working. So when you have a look at these struts, you can actually see the gap open up at the back. So if you look at the strut and you look at where his calf is, it might be about a 1-inch gap or 20 mil gap, and as he progresses forward, the gap opens up and widens, which allows that deflection. So with these struts, the clients make choices themselves on what they want to wear. Some of the clients have more than one strut, so some of the younger clients and even some of the older guys, I'll show you Russell a bit later. Russell's a golfer. So when Russell's on a golf course, his optimal walking strut is about a category 2 or 3, but when he plays golf, he prefers a category 1 for golf. Most flexible. And so David, so again, if you don't mind, I'll talk. You guys, everyone can hear me okay? Yeah. So very fluent. David had pants on, would you be able to pick? Probably, mate. Obviously the health professionals probably, but a lot of you won't be able to. Okay, so I'm going to go, we're progressing in age brackets. We're going to show you Caesar from Melbourne. Caesar's about 50. So Caesar has, again, 0 power in all groups. You're going to see Caesar walk up and down the ramp. So he's going to walk across some grass, step up. We had at our old place, we used to have like this little dry riverbed, so he's going to walk in the riverbed for you to have a look at. So Caesar's self-selected 300 mil category 5 strut. That's actually a very stiff strut. But for Caesar's height and body weight, that's what he feels is the most appropriate, that gives him the most energy return and function. So Caesar's walking in a riverbed here. You see Caesar use, go up and down. Okay. 6 months later, how does Caesar walk 6 months later? So often when we see clients over the next 3 to 6 months, generally after that 1 month to 2 months fitting period, the CMT client, in some instances, it's hard to manage if your ankles have a lot of sideways turn. If your ankles have a lot of sideways turn, you've got to work with your orthotist very closely, because your outside ankle bone is exposed to a lot of pressure in all braces. Okay? There's a saying in orthopedics, thou shalt not have varus. And if your ankles roll outwards, you have varus. So it's basically what happens is it's hard to treat. So you've got to work with your orthotist. In some of our CMT clients, we might make 2 or 3 foot sections until we get that right. In some of our clients, like hard right pull, we try and go for optimal correction. Sometimes we correct too aggressively, and clients are sore on the inside part of the foot, so we have to remake the foot section and back it off a bit. And then at the 12-month or 18-month or 24 mark, go again and try and get better correction. The more you can keep your foot and ankle straight, the more your knee and hip alignment stays in better alignment long term.
So does that mean that the Helios type braces won't necessarily be suitable for someone who's got a significant outturned ankle?
No, it just takes a bit of work. Yeah, so they're very simple, very simple. So I'm going to show you 70-year-old Belle. So Belle lives in North Queensland now. So without orthotics on, as an older client now, Belle's balance is very heavily affected. All of the footage that I'm showing to you today, the CMT clients have given permission for their video to be shared, and we share it on our Facebook site, so you can go back and have a look at this footage after. So Belle's going on our ramp at our place, which is 1 in 14. So the struts are allowing, instead of being stiff, they just allow controlled movement. Okay? So I'm going to show you Russell, our golfer, and then I'll just finish off with our 8-year-old. So again, Russell, very similar pattern to a lot of our CMT clients. Okay, very similar. I might actually, I'm a bit tight, so I'm just going to go to our 8-year-old. Okay? I'll play this on the booth if you want to have a look. Okay, so we have young Taj here from Perth. Okay, so when I look at Taj, like I feel a bit sad about my profession orthotically because I don't think we've done enough to help him out from years 1 to 7. Okay, so Taj has got CMT, but he's very heavily affected. His alignment of his foot and ankle for someone who's worn bracing for 7 years is actually poor. Okay. So he's wearing a pair of solid AFOs here, which is prescribed a lot. So I wanted to show this to you. So I want you to see when he lands on his heel, if the brace doesn't allow movement, how does he get the knee down? I'll play it again in a second. Okay. So Taj was the first Australian child to wear strut designed for kids. Okay, so there's a misnomer in healthcare that kids can't use carbon fibre. It's actually wrong. It's about what their body weight and size and what the stiffness of strut is that you've got to choose for that client. Okay, so I'll just play Taj again. So when I see Taj, orthotically, we should have corrected his foot and ankle better for that 7 to 8 year period. The reason why my partner goes and does the work with Cerebral Palsy Alliance is because of the results that Taj has shown over this last 12 months. So what Cerebral Palsy Alliance is saying is, if we have this window of opportunity for kids to develop their skills of learning to walk, why aren't kids in the best stuff straight away? Do you know what I mean? If we think their walking patterns are better. So again, so when he lands on his heel, the only way for that foot to come down is for the knee to collapse forward. So we're asking an 8-year-old to deflect carbon fibre, and he can do it easily. So we have, even though there's no ankle joint in these designs, the ankle is moving through controlled range. Okay. So to wrap up, I just thought, the reason why I put this slide, here we have, for those of you who follow footy, we have a Tasmanian footballer, Daniel Kirk. He played state level SANFL football for Glenelg and Woodville West Coast. So the reason I put it up was Daniel went up for a marking contest 6 years ago. Centre half forward ruckman, he's 6'6", enormous bloke, right? Went up for a marking contest, came down, the ankle fractured. 6 surgical procedures later, the ankle hasn't healed. So as Daniel, as a 30-year-old, who the only way he can walk now without pain is for him to wear an orthosis. So he wears an orthosis every minute of every day because it allows him to function to do whatever he wants to do. So if you're hesitant about potentially wearing orthotics, speak to your orthotist wherever you're based in all the states. And some of our clients don't just wear one orthosis. Daniel wears 3 orthoses. So he has an everyday walking orthosis where he tries to minimise the pain that he has. He has a waterproof orthosis that he wears at the beach for swimming, etc. And he wears an orthosis for bed resting so that his ankle pain isn't bad when he gets up in the morning. Okay? So now orthotics allows you to do anything you want to do, and our NDIS funding schemes are allowing you to support you in that if you have goals that you want to accomplish and achieve. Thanks very much.